Song for the end. I've got a song for the end. There we go then. Come on, let's get some of the lads together. Let's have a good old sing song, yeah. Okay, yeah, all right. Come on, fellas. Get around the piano. Let's have a good go. Come on, then. Are you ready? Come on, you lot. Come on, then.
Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Lincoln City are the team, the Ravens is their name. Stinsel Bank is their home ground and football is their game. So come and cheer them on, you lads, support them all the way. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our...
Morning all, how we doing? Not sure about this layout, to be honest. I could turn it sideways, but it's a little bit of a pain to hold. So you're going to get kind of this odd looking video. I wanted to do a quick catch up. I haven't done a dog walk for a long while. Predominantly things like getting married and dog not walking because it's been so warm, so I haven't been able to put anything out. Hopefully you have still had your fill of Lincoln City content from us. We've been trying to stay regular with the podcast. Usually we take a couple of weeks off through the summer. We've tried not to do that for you, and obviously we've got some pretty big plans coming up through the course of the season with 2 extra pods. There's going to be a little bit more general content as well around around stats and a kind of a monthly show, so it's going to be an exciting time. What it does mean is that these dog walks are not going to be quite as much of a focus on YouTube as they have been. Not going to be releasing them as an audio podcast. What we're going to do is I'm just going to put these out for patrons of the site audio wise. So if you're a patron, you'll be able to listen back to these purely on audio without having to look at the god awful graphics that I am producing, because I'm not a graphic designer. So I've put transfer update. What I really hope is that some of you don't think that that's my way of saying I've heard something from the club. It isn't. I just really wanted to kind of pull everything that we know or we think we know at this stage, and just kind of round it off, because there's obviously a lot of people on Twitter doing the whole do a signing thing, which they do, and Lincoln are being quiet and all this sort of stuff, which it's not the case, is it? So where are we in terms of actual transfers? We've signed 3 players. So we've signed Alistair Smith, as we know, midfielder, possibly coming in kind of as a Max Sanders replacement. So we've done that. Early business done and dusted. Brought Rico Hackett in, who it's kind of, it looks like one in, one out, Hackett and Vernon, but I'll come on to that in a moment. But we needed a wide player. Hackett can tuck in a little bit as well, so he's going to be more adept at playing in that 3 across the front. And we've brought in Lucas Jensen, which is a change, I think, in our approach. With Jensen, we've kind of gone for our own goalkeeper, but who has had the loan spell, as are the 3 previous keepers that we've had on loan. So, he's kind of in the same sort of bracket. He's probably more Alex Palmer than Carl Rushworth. I mean, Alex Palmer came to us not with the international billing of Josh Griffiths and Carl Rushworth, but he came to us with having loan spells and that sort of thing. So I think Jensen is more Alex Palmer. If he's 80% of the goalkeeper that Alex Palmer was for us, then he's going to be a big player. We know Sam Long's gone out on loan, so we know Sam's gone to Falkirk. They're a big club, a little bit down on their luck actually. I thought that they were probably Scottish Championship, and they're not. They're the level below that, so they're Scottish 3rd tier. But they're a big club. They're going to be challenging at the top of the table, and he should be their number 1, which means he's going to be getting plenty of football. He's going to hopefully be playing in a half decent team with a half decent defence in front of him. Boston fans were quite critical of Sam. I think that was really harsh, because he was in a team there that was chopping and changing around and all sorts. Sam's still a big prospect for this football club. And I think I've said in the past about players going out on loan. Look at Alex Palmer's loan record. I think he was at Worcester a couple of times, Kidderminster emergency loans at possibly Notts County and Oldham. I might be wrong about that. I'm trying to do that from memory. And look what he's now gone on to become. So he's 24, 25 when he made his first team kind of splash at West Brom. Sam's got a lot of time to go, and there's every chance that he could have more loan spells and still go on to be our number 1 keeper. Don't be ruling that boy out at all. So that's the crux of it. We've recalled Freddie Draper and Alicia Huey. My guess would be that there would be loan spells on the horizon for them. I think that we will keep 3 strikers on our books potentially through the course of the season, 3 kind of what you would class as number 9s. And one of those is going to be Ben House. One of them, I think, will come from the pool of Draper, Kendall, and McCarmer. And then I think that the third one will be an incomer, which I'll come on to shortly. So I would expect 2 of Kendall, Draper, and McCarmer to go out on loan. And it wouldn't surprise me if that isn't Draper and Charlie Kendall. It wouldn't surprise me if we keep Jovan. I think Jovan has certainly surprised people at the football club with his development. And he's the striker that's come under the radar. We're talking about Freddie's brilliant time in Ireland. We're talking about Charlie's great time at Eastbourne. Jovan's the one that hasn't got the previous record to back up. I mean, he was at Brackley for 6 months last season and played twice, I think. But I think he's valued with the football club. So he's going to be quite interesting in that respect. Okay, the dog is following me. That's good news. And I think Alicia Huey's another one who it will be. We'll look at these players in pre-season. Look, nothing I don't think is ever going to be set in stone. But I think that we will certainly have a look at Alicia in pre-season and see how he's settled in. And it's always saying the League of Ireland isn't this quality or isn't that quality. Look at Sean Rowan, couldn't get in our team and comes back after 6 months in Ireland. And I thought he was very, very good last season. It's always saying, oh, he had average games or this was wrong or that was wrong. The kid's still a teenager. I'd really I hope that Sean pens a new deal. If he doesn't, then there's a cash windfall in it. The Sean Rowan situation, which part of the transfer up there, I suppose, is win-win for us. It really is. And it might not look that people go, well, we won't get what he was worth. But when it comes to a football club transfers, it kind of gets me that there's so many pessimists out there. I was even reading comments about Alistair Smith going, well, why is everyone saying he's good if we don't know? Yeah, that's the case. You never know when a player signs if he's any good or not. There's hits and there's misses. We know that. We've seen it with players that we've signed, the Chris Maguires. For every Chris Maguire that you bring in, there's an Ethan Arahan, or for every Paddy O'Connor that you bring in, there's a Charles Vernon. Do you know what I mean? Some work, some don't. Likelihood is Alistair Smith might work, Rico Hackett might not work, but the pessimism around the new striker is almost or a new player rather, is almost as bad to me as the optimism around the new player. No player that comes into Lincoln City is a world beater. No player that comes into Lincoln City is proven bad before they've kicked a ball. So I've lost my train of thought now. I can't do where I was going with that. I think it's the pessimism, wasn't it, around transfer business? It's the pessimism around all these other teams are doing business and we're not. And that's not the case, is it? We've signed 3 players. We've already got ahead of the curve. And some players are spending money. Fleetwood have brought in 2 free transfers in Danny Mayer and Ryan Broom, decent signings that will have cost a pretty packet as well. The pessimism is something that kind of really gets to me. It's almost like a negativity, isn't it? Straight away when you sign a player, it's a negativity for existing players that we have in the squad as well. I mentioned it on the podcast last night, like TJ Ioma. Remember when he came in and he was lauded as the brilliant, the next great thing. He struggled a little bit, but he's still a quality player as a quality member of our squad. Anyway, we're not assessing the squad, we're assessing transfers. So that's where we are at the moment. Plenty of rumours going around. I mean, there was rumours that Jack Sparks, who signed for Portsmouth this week, was a player that we were looking at. Didn't come from anywhere official. I don't tend to hear as many rumours about Lincoln City players now as we used to, which I think is quite interesting. I think that since there was an overhaul of the backroom staff, things seems to have tightened up quite a bit in terms of what gets out and what doesn't, which not great for you and I, but we're relying on the likes of Pete O'Rourke and Alan Nixon, journalists who, their trade is having rumours to talk about. So make of that what you will. I keep losing my train of thought. It's the hay fever. It's absolutely killing me at the moment. So what positions are we looking for? Who are we looking to sign? Well, we know for a fact there are at least 2 positions that we are definitely looking to bring players in for. The first one is a striker. So we have done the podcast yesterday on this type of striker we think will come in. For me, I think a lone striker. I think we're going to be looking at what the club will probably term, a triple A loan striker but then they'll also have a kind of a reserve pool as well. When we signed Luke Plange, my understanding was that with 3 or 4 others on the list who, if Luke Plange fell through on that particular day, we would turn and kind of, when I say drop down the list, it isn't particularly going for a second or third target. I think it's important to remember when you hear that Lincoln City have got a target, it's easy to think that if we miss out on that player, we've then missed out on our top target. Whereas actually, I think that the way that we do our transfers, we tend to pick for a position a handful of players. We will sometimes pick a player that we want, like Ethan Arahan, for instance. But I also think that with loan strikers, we signed Luke Plange, but don't think if Plange had gone elsewhere and let's say one of the other boys had come in that was on the list, would it have particularly been a step down? I'm not sure. And Ryan, a pool rather than a list. And I think that's right. When you do your short list, some of your Football Manager players, when you do your short list of players that you want to sign, you might have one that you think he's the one that I'd like, but you're not disappointed if one of the other ones comes in. Excuse me. So I think we'll have a pool of players. On the podcast, I say I think somebody like Dale Taylor will be on that pool of players. I think somebody like Sinclair Armstrong at QPR that Chris picked will be on that pool of players. I think there will be strikers on there who we're not particularly aware of. Michael Horton's tweeted, we are wanting to sign somebody to back up Ben House. I say this on the podcast, I'll say it again, and there are going to be some people I know that instantly get excited, and there are going to be some people that groans. I believe that Tyler Walker will be on that list. Because I think a lot of things align around Tyler Walker, as they do particularly around Dale Taylor, that just keep ticking certain boxes. And in both of those players, favours for Tyler, he knows the club, he is available, and it's the type of club where he's going to go to. He's not had a great time at Coventry. So who's going to be looking at Tyler Walker? Bolton, well, they've more or less made most of their striker signings. Tyler's not going to want to go to a club that's got 3 or 4 strikers that he's got to compete with. He's at an age where he's got to either be one of 2 that's playing regular football, or it ain't any good to him unless he's taking another payday. And if he takes another payday, 2-year deal, not getting regular football, he comes out of it at 28, and suddenly Mansfield is your only option, or Grimsby is your only option. And that's a step down into the lower tier. And essentially what's he done? So he needs to go somewhere where he knows he's comfortable, where he knows he's loved, where he knows he's going to be appreciated, where he's kind of familiar. Lincoln ticks all the boxes. And the other teams that are likely to be looking at him are the likes of Port Vale, Oxford United, Exeter City, Bristol Rovers, teams that I believe personally are the same size as us. And if you're then putting all of us in all of us in a line, the 2 factors are either going to be one where he feels most comfortable, or 2 who pays him the most money. We're not going to be the second one. We are going to be the first one. If we were interested, if he was on our pool of players, I can see it happening. If it doesn't happen, I think we'll loan. Pete Summers, morning pal, says, I'm surprised nobody on the pod opted for no striker income when with the backup strikers to House being Draper and Kendall. Not going to happen. We made the mistake of having inexperienced backup strikers in Michael Appleton's second season, and it backfired. When we were starting with Freddie Draper and Dan Lundaloo wasn't really doing it, and Tom Hopper was kind of struggling a little bit as well. It's not going to happen. We're definitely going to bring somebody in my opinion. I can't see us doing it. I think if Kendall had gone out and scored 15, 20 goals in the National League, different altogether. But I can't see it happening. I don't think we're going to take that risk. We've taken too many risks with strikers in the past. Matt Reed, Ollie Palmer and Matt Green being the only strikers that we had. What you got in your head, dog? Come here. What's that? Hang on. Spit. Yeah, so Matt Green, Ollie Palmer, remember that 3 strikers, and then in the end we ended up chucking all 3 of them on as we kind of wound down that season. So yeah, I don't think we're going to do that. The other position that I think Michael Horton has tweeted that we're almost certain to sign is a winger, a replacement for Charles Vernam. So Rico Hackett has come in, but Hackett probably is more of the, well, I suppose it doesn't matter how you shake it up, does it? But if it's Hackett and Vernam swapping, we still need to replace Midi Shadipo. And if it's Hackett and Shadipo, then we need to replace Charles Vernam. Again, this could be a loan. It could be a high value loan. I saw the boy from Bournemouth mentioned, potential, I suppose. I think that I still think we'll utilise the loan market, we haven't done so early. Very few clubs have done so early, because when these bigger clubs come back for pre-season training, they send academy teams and under 23 teams off to play friendlies. The sorts of players that are going to be making loan deals later in the window will be a big part of their team's pre-season kind of preparations, even if they're not playing for Arsenal's first team, or if they're not playing for Nottingham Forest's first team. They're still going to be involved at some level somewhere. Those clubs are going to want to look at their players. They're their assets. You don't let your asset go blindly, otherwise you're sending a message to that asset saying, we don't even want you at this stage. So loan signings were never going to happen before we go to Spain. In my opinion, was never going to happen. And if you look back over the loan signings that we've made in the previous few seasons, Brennan Johnson, I think, came on the eve of the season. Alex Palmer came on the eve of the season because the other lad, Ethan Ross, was playing in pre-season. Carl Rushworth, I think, was on the eve, was earlier, wasn't he? I think Rushworth. And Matty Virtue, when the season had already started. So loan players happen later. Bear that in mind. Because people say if Lincoln City needed 8 players, we've signed 3 permanently. If we were to then go to our loan quota, which I don't think is necessarily what we do, the 5 loans now could be a couple of weeks. I don't think so. I think there'll be a couple more permanent signings. I know nothing. It wouldn't surprise me if there wasn't somebody on the plane to Spain that is either, I mean, I don't think announced, I'm not saying announced today, but it wouldn't surprise me if there isn't somebody who ends up going to Spain who is either imminent to be signed or something like that. And the photos that go out will always be double checked. But you know, the people that go out, just because we haven't announced a signing doesn't mean that there won't be somebody going out to Spain who isn't particularly known to the club at the moment. So we're talking wide players. Midi Shadipo's a free agent. Wouldn't surprise me if he wasn't the sort of person we were looking for. I also think we're going to be looking for fullbacks. Now, Regan Paul's gone. He was playing centre half for most in the second half of the season. Lars Sorensen was filling in ably at right back. Could we get through the season with Sorensen, Ahui, and TJ Aoma? Potentially. But if you're saying get through the season, is that an issue? I think we need somebody who's a little bit more mobile. I think you could have Lass as the right back potentially, but then we'd probably need to sign another central midfielder. I don't think you can look at Lass and say he can play right back or central midfield, so he's going to cover those 2 spots, because then you're in danger, because if you then need to cover both those 2 spots in one game, you're struggling. So I think a right-sided defender, if not another central midfielder. And again, don't rule out a cash bid for a player. Not a big cash bid, but don't rule us trying to bring in a player who will add value to the side. I think we're trying to steer away a little bit from having one of the youngest squads in the division. I think we were the youngest last season behind Barnsley, but Barnsley were in the playoffs. So it proves actually that being a young side isn't a major hindrance if you get it right. But you've got to have the right kind of spine, and I think we're nearly there with that. On the left, Sean's mentioned it already, Harry Boyes. There was a thing on his Instagram, wasn't he, where he had done a little Instagram picture of him, and I think Ethan Arahan and another lad were all stood together. Lincoln City signing Harry Boyes for me would be another of those unsurprising moves. Whether that would be on a permanent deal, and I think if it were, it would be a kind of a Teo Edens style deal where, you know, there's a good sell-on clause available for the opposition. But with Sheffield United going up, I don't see Harry Boyes getting in their first team. They've then got 2 choices. Cash in now, let him get regular football with us and potentially move on for a fee, which means that they then cash in later. Or loan him to the Championship on the hope that he may well develop. That's their choice. I think for Harry, you know, the best thing that he can be doing now is playing regular football. A loan into the Championship can be a risk. It depends where you go to. I think the Championship's a little more unforgiving. If he comes to us and plays regular football, he can kind of lift his confidence and lift his value as well. I would be delighted if we signed Harry Boyes. And up until Sheffield Wednesday away, I thought that I thought the loan was a flop, if I'm honest. And then Sheffield Wednesday away, he put the ball in for Danny Mandrew, didn't he? Or he had the shot for Mandrew to rebound and to pick up and score. And after that, I thought that he was excellent. And he's just the type of player that I want to see us signed. Somebody who gets forward, somebody who offers so much width that when the 3 forwards can tuck in a little bit, they can get closer together. And I think that's where you're going to find the likes of Rico Hackett thriving. Is I think Chris calls them half spaces, doesn't he? But do you know what I mean? In between the striker and the winger, in between the defence and the midfield, those kind of positions where you can pick up the ball. But you only get players like Hackett into those positions if you've got the right kind of width from fullback. And you've got to also have not just the width, but you've also got to have the intelligence for them to track back and cover as well. I think Boyes has got most of that. Really, really like that lad. If you can get that on the other side of the field, spot on. I actually think there's a danger of us signing a second left wing back as well. And again, it still wouldn't surprise me if we don't sign Sammy Robinson, who was released by Port Vale. He was a little bit in and out of Port Vale's side. If we signed him as our starting left wing back, there might be a few people wondering, well, possibly is that the right move? But I think if you sign him with the potential to develop him, we've had a good record of developing players. And people say things like, "Oh, we only sign Crocs," or "We only sign flops," and you can always pick those ones out. But you can also pick out players who have come to us with, you know, minimal football beforehand, who have gone on and done well, or minimal injury problems. And you go far back as Hurdley, and you go as far back as O'Connor, and they did really well for us. And yet, really, Sean Long. We picked Sean Long up from Reading. He came in. Okay, he wasn't a massive player for us, but he's gone on to prove that he was a decent acquisition, and he was just probably unlucky. And then you look at James Wilson, one of the most decorated players in lower league football in terms of performance, in terms of trophies and promotions over the last 5 or 6 years. He was somebody that really struggled for us. So, you could easily pick up somebody from a Port Vale or an Oxford who haven't had a fantastic season, and they come in and they smash it for us. And I think that's probably what we're looking at with Rico Hackett. Wikipedia warriors who get all their information by looking there and going, well, he hasn't scored many goals, he's not going to be very good for us. Those sorts of people are going to be looking at the likes of Rico Hackett and going, oh, I'm not really sure. Same people would have looked at Ben House and gone, well, he hasn't got a good goal scoring record. And we're sincerely hoping that Ben House can, by the end of next season, move on for a fee. Sean says Jay Ben put him out on loan. Almost certainly Jay Ben, I think, to head out on loan. Had a bit of a struggle at Bohemians, needs regular football. Wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't go into the National League and back where he was with Halifax and play there. So I'm going to go to the top before I take your questions. I've just turned around halfway through my dog walk. Feel free to drop questions in at the bottom. So Craig Harvey, morning, Gaz. Do you think we might see another body in before we fly to Spain on Sunday? I think I've covered that. We might already have a body around. We might have trialists in. You don't find these things out really anymore. Football's kind of closed over the last 10, 20 years, hasn't it? You used to know who all the trialists were. I was looking back through some newspaper reports from the late 90s the other day for an article, and it was this player's on trial or that player's on trial. With social media, the microscope comes out. So we had Craig Allardyce, Sam Allardyce's son, on trial for a friendly against Newcastle back in 1998 or 99. I can't remember the exact date now, 98, I think, November. And he kind of got a pass in on the Echo. Now, if we got a player on loan, it would be newspaper articles. The likes of me would be doing articles. All the news aggregators would be doing it. It would be big news. So I think the football clubs try and keep it as closed as possible. Remember Remy Howarth, how we kept him quiet the whole time that he was with the club, and it was, a trialist, whatever his name was. It was a big thing, I think. And be interesting. Be interesting, I think, to see or to know if we've got anyone going out to Spain, because it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we signed somebody, but there's no rush. There's one person, I mention him every time. If he's watching, he'll know it. Nick Oxbury. He springs into life every transfer window. He's like one of those ex-agent accounts. You only ever hear from him when the window's open. And he was saying yesterday, I can't believe we haven't brought anybody in before Spain. I said to him, do we get points for playing out in Spain? Don't, do we? You don't get anything. You go out, you have a training session. It's team bonding. Ethan Arahan came in the middle of the season, was one of our strongest players. He didn't need to team bond. He didn't go out to Spain and play a friendly match against Port Vale and get a suntan. He was straight into it. So, bear in mind the nucleus of the team is strong as well. It's not like Michael Appleton's first season where it was 15, 16 new faces. There's already a team structure in place. So I'm not worried that if we don't sign anyone before we go to Spain. I'm not worried if we don't sign anybody before we go to Boston, although I think we probably will. Sid, morning, pal. With Draper red card last game, will Ban carry over into League One or just League of Ireland? I suspect that it's just League of Ireland, but I might be wrong. I think bans are imposed by individual FAs. I think. I don't know. Steve Freeston, do you think we'll end up with 9 on the bench akin to the Premier League at some point? What a load of bollocks that is. I think they've just said it for the Championship, haven't they, as well? 9 subs, you can use 5. I mean, all that's doing is it's closing off potential for players to develop. So, look, going off piste a little bit here, but the St George's Park at Burton was put in place, the training ground for young English players and England age groups, was put in place in reaction to our poor performances at international level compared to the likes of France. And France had got for some reason I'm thinking it's just Fontaine was the striker, something Fontaine. So their training centre. And their young players went through there, and they had this fantastic ethos of bringing young players through. And you know, there was a French team rather, that came through, and they were absolutely amazing. And so St George's Park was put in place to try and develop that. And the England setup has improved because of some of those changes. That's why we have so many good young players now. And we do. It's easy to be critical of some of our young players. But look at some of the big transfers that are going on right now. James Maddison, England. Declan Rice plays for England. These are big, big names. Look at some of the most exciting players in the Premier League at the moment who are getting headlines all the time. Jack Grealish, English. Bukayo Saka, English. Something's going well, and you can criticize the EFL trophy all you like, but a lot of these young players get their first senior football in the EFL trophy, and then they go out on loan, and they build up from there. And you look at the likes of Harry Kane was out on loan while he was at Spurs. I think he was at Orient and Millwall, might be wrong. You know, valuable loan spells. Carl Rushworth was valuable loan spell. By having 9 substitutes, what you're going to get is Premier League clubs and now Championship clubs keeping hold of their talented youngsters for 10 minutes in the final throes of a 4-0 win at Preston North End. And that's not going to benefit their development. It's really not. Look at the Welsh national team. Brennan Johnson, Joe Morrell, regulars. Why? Because they play regular football. And okay, I appreciate it's not England, but because they're young players at clubs, Bristol City and Nottingham Forest respectively, that weren't getting in their side, wanted regular football. By having 9 substitutes, the Brennan Johnsons might be, well, Forest go, oh, we'll keep him. We'll stick him on the bench. We'll keep him around the first team squad. He knows what it's like to be around a squad. These players know what it's like to be around football. They're not cleaning boots anymore. Being around the first team squad and having their boots cleaned or whatever, it isn't a privilege like it used to be in the olden days. They need to be playing regular football. 9 substitutes, honestly. What next? You're soon going to be able to change your entire team at half time. It's bollocks. That's what it is. Utter bollocks. Right, so Pete says, doubt that Walker will move from Nottingham, so that'll impact his decision. Yep, and you know, in a lot of instances, transfers, I think, fans don't realise how much transfers will be influenced by location. And Jack Sparks is one who I believed that we were interested in. I was told that he might be looking at houses up here, the Exeter fullback. He signs for Portsmouth. Why? Because he doesn't have to move far, does he? Exeter to Portsmouth, it's not a million miles away. So yeah, regional is really interesting. Danny Mayer, there's a reason Danny Mayer's moved back up to that area of the country, to Fleetwood, rather than come into let's say a Lincoln, whether we're interested in him or not, but it's back up closer to his home. Cole Stockton probably doesn't have to move very far to drive to Burton, whereas if he comes to Lincoln, you have to uproot your family. If you've got a young family, you're 29, football, you know, at that level is a limited kind of a limited time span. You probably don't want to relocate. Max Sanders might thrive at Leyton Orient, probably never really settled up here. So always take that into account as well. And it could work in our favour in terms of Tyler Walker. And it's why it works in our favour when clubs around us are actually doing well, when Nottingham Forest are in the Premier League, or when even players like Leeds United, etc., in the Premier League. When we got Robbie Gotts, you know, location is a big factor. Kev Barwise, this is an unusual one. Morning, Kev. Not heard from you for a while, pal. I hope you're all well. Morning. Congrats on your recent wedding. Thank you. I'm feeling positive of a top half finish this season, as 3 signings so far look like a good acquisition. Yep. One reason I've always got time for Kev is because you never get all misery or all joy. You know, he's extremes, aren't you, Kev? You are extremes. But it's reasoned debate, and they do look good signings on paper. You know, we're quarter of a way through, or 2/3 of a way, 1/3 of a way rather, through a decent summer. But you know, I think, well, what do they say? One swallow doesn't make a summer. 3 permanent good signings don't make a summer. But I tell you what, it's a bloody good start. Matthew Walker need a left back. Yeah, I think I covered that. A right back, covered that. One midfielder. Yeah, two strikers. Disagree. If Draper goes on loan, I think one striker. If Draper goes on loan, because I still think we've got Makama. I'm not buying into two strikers. We play one up top. There is absolutely no way Lincoln City are going to bring in two strikers expecting to play as well as Ben House. It's a route to disappointment, and it ain't going to happen, in my opinion, of course. Darryl Noon, I see Norburn has gone to Blackpool from Peterborough. Is there a chance of Virtue coming to us? I had heard a little bird tell me that that wasn't a transfer that was completely off the table. No, we know that Mark Kennedy likes Matty Virtue, but if we were to sign Virtue, you've then got three midfielders who you all expect to start, and I can't see us changing to a 3-5-2 with the players that we've been bringing in, like Rico Hackett, unless you're going to convert Hackett to a wing back. I'm not so sure. But then again, I suppose it doesn't hurt to have the options in the squad. So I think that he's a more realistic target than Sam Clucas, as Paul Norton's put. But again, you never know. I suppose it depends on what Clucas wants. It's hard, isn't it? It's tough to pick one of them. We certainly wouldn't sign both. Of the two, I think we're more likely to sign Virtue, because I think whoever you sign has got to be available for 60, 70, 80% of your games as a bare minimum. And Sam's injury record hasn't been great in recent years. It really hasn't. Adam Barlow, what do you think we do with Hacks? Try and offload him. Honest God, honest truth. Couldn't get in the Gillingham side last season. He's come back. Yeah, I like Hacks as a person. I like him. I can't see him playing outside of League Two this season. I really can't. The problem you've got is how do we sell that with him being on a decent whack, which he is. It's hard. I can't see us paying him up. He's in the last year of his contract. I don't know. There's the question. What do we do with Hacks? It's hard. It's a tough one. It is a tough one. So Pete says a league ban is a league ban. So he thinks Freddie Draper's ban carries over. It really doesn't make a huge difference, I don't think. I knew it was something Fontaine as well. Clairefontaine is the French training base. Paul Norton, Charlie Kendall, destined for non-league. On loan, 100%. Long term, too early to say. Too early to say. There are some strikers you look at it, struggled early in their career that have done really well. Everyone who drooled over Cole Stockton, if you looked at his early season, his early career, non-league, jobber, jumping from club to club, not a massive player. So the likes of Charlie, the likes of Sam Long are players that I still think have got big futures with us. I really do. Or futures with the club right now. Young players don't have to make an immediate impact, and I think there is something of a misconception around that. So, for instance, we signed Charlie Kendall. He's not in the first team in 18 months, and everyone goes, he's a flop, or are we going to sell him? This is what I'm saying. This isn't what I'm saying. You're saying, by the way, Paul. I'm saying generally. People will say, well, he's a flop. He struggled. He's not going to make it. You only have to look at the boy who was at Wigan, whose name escapes me at the moment. Might have been Callum Lang, who he just did a couple of loan spell after loan spell, and then all of a sudden popped up in their first team. I'm sure, was it Lang? Was he at Shrewsbury? Possibly. I might be wrong. So there isn't any rush for them. And I think when you're a team now in League One of English football, almost getting to that point where we're becoming part of what I call the hoarding problem. And you have to be. It's the way that clubs kind of develop. It's the thing that I was just calling the 9 substitutes thing for being bad for. We have to have these players and we have to give them time to develop. There's no point in bringing them in, giving them a year and going, he ain't going to make it. Look at Alicia Huey, kind of released, Shadow Scholar program, came to us, suddenly bulked up, suddenly found a spurt, he's taken some coaching on board, whatever he's done, and suddenly he's a big prospect. And I think that players can do that. Young players don't have to burst onto the scene at 18 or 19 and be finished and sold and done and dusted at 21. Look at Sean Rowan, burst onto the scene at 16 and then did nothing for 2 seasons, season and a half, then came in last year, still a young man, still learning, still developing, and looked every part of the first team picture. I think the point of this kind of dog walk chat, which has been surprisingly popular, considering I haven't really got anything to say, with 61 of you on now, thank you very much. But the point of it was that there isn't any rush. We're not even in July yet. The season doesn't kick off for another 4 weeks. Signings will still be being made 2 months from today. because 2 months from today will be deadline day, I believe. 2 months ago, we were still playing the previous season. So in terms of signing players, we're not even halfway through the period that we can sign players. And don't get me wrong, I don't like that. I don't like the fact that the transfer window is open for the first 4 weeks of the season, because I do think it makes a huge difference. And maybe with the players that we signed in later in the window last year, if they'd been there from the start, we might have had a couple more points. Wouldn't have made a lot of difference, but you know what I mean. So there's no rush. Just because we're going to Spain doesn't mean we've missed out on targets. Just because other clubs are signing players, the likes of Ryan Broom and Danny Mayer, yeah, they're not the sort of players that we're going to be targeting, in my opinion. I mean, Danny Mayer would have been a great signing, and I don't think I'm breaking anybody's confidence, because I was told by a manager who's no longer with the club that two seasons ago, when we signed Hacks and Chris Maguire, we inquired about Danny Mayer, who was apparently looking for a move closer back home, but we couldn't make it work in terms of wages. And that's one thing to consider, a massive thing to consider. This football club will not overspend. You know, if we are in with a shout of Tyler Walker, and we've offered him, let's say, $3,000, and someone else offers him 4.5, and his agent comes back and says, match that and you can have him, I don't think we'd do it. I don't think we'll put the long-term progression and sustainability of the football club at risk. And sometimes that means playing poker in the transfer market. It means holding your nerve. It means holding a poker face. We've already got some acquisitions through the door. We know where we need other acquisitions. I think we're in a good position. And you know, when Kev Barwise comes on here and says, you know, he's feeling confident, 3 good signings, I think that says everything, because there's different elements of the fan base all feel relatively positive right now. But it's a marathon, not a sprint, this transfer window. It's all right, Portsmouth getting all of their business done early. Every season there's teams who do that. Every season there's teams. Last year it was MK Dons, loads of business early. Everyone said they mean business. They're going to do really well. What happened? They went down, measured, balanced. I don't think we've had a bad record in the transfer market since 2 summers ago. So I think we had a good winter window when we brought in Brooke Norton-Cuffy and Morgan Whitaker and Ben House. I think we had a decent summer window last season when we brought in the likes of Paudie O'Connor. For instance, I think we had a good winter window bringing in Ethan Arahan and Dylan Duffy. I think Danny Mandrew is a big player for us this season. It's just little bits and bobs. You know, when you're fine tuning, there's no rush. If you're going out to buy a Christmas tree, you have to get it in and get it in your house. If you're buying the decorations, you've already got some on. You can take your time and pick the ones you want. And that's where we are. I keep likening us to a Christmas tree. 3 years ago, even 2 years ago, we had to buy the spine. We had to buy the mannequin to put the clothes on. We had to buy the heart and soul. We don't have to this season. We've got a heart and soul to our team. We've got a spine to our team. And where we've needed to sign to create the spine, we've already done that. So we've got the big goalkeeper. We've got the centre half who, and I'll do an article on this, is my pick for captain. We've got the combative midfielder who will scrap and fight and win. We've even got the attacking midfielder, but you've got your Ben House, your centre forward. There's a spine right down there. We've got good young players peppered around that. The likes of Dylan Duffy, the likes of Danny Mandrew. We're not in a bad position. So just be patient. There's no need to be pessimistic about this transfer window. If in a month's time we've still only signed 3 players, I'll share the pessimism. And I haven't seen a lot of it. To be fair. I've just seen some of it. It's just, you know, chill. Enjoy the summer. The boys are back training. Stuff's going to be happening at the football club. I'm going to Boston. I shall hopefully see some of you there. Not today, obviously, but when Lincoln are playing. I'm going to take in a pre-season friendly. I never do pre-season friendlies. That's how I feel about the squad at the minute. I don't know why. I think on the field, there's a connection. More so than probably any time since we were beaten at Wembley. Potentially even before that. I think that season, the season after that, certainly there was a disconnection with some of the players, the likes of Maguire, etc., who came in. I just feel a connection with this squad and these players now. And I think probably even since before COVID, because it was hard to feel that with COVID with some of these players, because, you know, we didn't see them, we weren't around them. It was hard to get that. So is this the first time we've had a serious, decent connection since we won League Two? I don't know. Maybe. I just feel energized. And whether we sign someone today, whether we sign someone next Wednesday, whether we sign someone a week today, ain't going to make any difference. As long as we've signed enough players to start the season in a month or so's time, and as long as by the time the transfer window closes, we've got a squad that can withstand the minor injury crisis, I'll be happy. You should be too. Carl Mercer, hello pal, hope you're well. Congratulations on your recent wedding. Looking forward to being back at Sincilbank again. Whatever happens on the pitch will be a bonus. Do you know what? I couldn't put it better myself. I've had a great summer so far. Loads still to go. Got gigs coming up. Got people to see, things to do. A couple of free Saturdays. Love it. Love my summers. I can live without football for a couple of months. No issue whatsoever. I'm quite looking forward to getting back as well. Quite looking forward to seeing what some of these players can do. And I'm quite looking forward to seeing what the recruitment team have got in their locker going forward. I really think you should be as well. Have a great day. This will be on the socials and on YouTube. But if you want to listen again, it will only be on the Patreon. The Patreon is £2.50 a month as a minimum. And these will now be kind of exclusive audio content on there. The only reason I'm pushing it is things like hosting costs, Y Scout costs, etc. are going up. So I'm just trying to cover those, but don't feel any pressure. £2.50 is a lot of money in this day and age. It really is. Yeah, no pressure. Take care. All the imps.